That's a touchy subject right now.
You touched
People
the rail.
make it.
You touched the rail.
I know. People make it their whole personality, okay? That's not my business. You can white-knuckle your way through any elimination diet. You can put your blinders on and just go on willpower alone and get through it and have nothing change at the end of it.
That's a great answer.
The only thing I did the first time I got out of rehab was I stopped using drugs. The second time, I recognized that I was going to have to change every single thing about my life if I wanted to maintain my recovery. So yes, there are best practices. And also, I recognize that there are so many barriers to entry for people to be healthy.
Welcome to 2%. I'm your host, Michael Easter. If you are joining us for the first time, as a reminder, this is a twice-weekly podcast where we get into how doing hard things can improve your life. My background is that I am a journalist. I've been a journalist for about 20 years covering health, wellness, and I travel into some of the most remote, extreme places on Earth in order to get you information that can help you live better. And this podcast, it grew out of my popular 2% Substack, where we've built an amazing community. And we're hoping to bring all the lessons we've learned in that through all of my research over to your video feeds and your audio feeds. And today, we have a really good episode. We're talking to Melissa Urban. She is the founder of Whole30. Now, if you have ever been in a grocery store in the last, say, 10 years, you have probably encountered Whole30. Their logo is on all sorts of different health foods. She's built a massive community of people around this Whole30 movement. And the reason why I wanted to talk to her is that she really fundamentally understands behavior change. In building the Whole30 community, she has literally millions of data points that shows what actually helps people change their habits. Yes, she typically looks at it through the lens of food, but she's really expanded her lens and thought about all different ways to change your life in ways that work and that you can use now. Not to mention, Melissa is amazing because she's really gone through some challenging things in life, and she's used them as leverage to build something truly amazing. So with all that said, here's my conversation with Melissa. Well, I'm here with Melissa Urban, one of my favorite people in the universe. So we met, 5 years ago. I was a first-time author, and I had this book. I didn't know if anyone would like it, and I sent it to you, and I said, would you read this, and would you maybe blurb it? I'm, begging you. You did. And I was shocked. I was like, I love this person already. And you shared it with your community, and it absolutely helped launch that book, which was just so amazing. And you've built this unbelievable Whole30 community, which millions of people have gone through the Whole30. It's changed a lot of lives, and you've learned a ton along the way. And so I am here to try and steal some of that wisdom from you for this show.
I feel like that's the same reason I'm here, to steal your wisdom. We did meet. I was one of the earliest readers of The Comfort Crisis. I have never said yes to a blurb so quickly, and I am very conscientious about what I choose to blurb. And that book literally changed my life. It's probably the book I recommend the most to people. So amazing. I feel the same.
Amazing. Well, this is going to be awesome. So you've had some traumatic experiences in your past. How did those affect you moving forward, both in a bad way and also in a good way? And what did you learn from those experiences?
Yeah. When I was 16, I was sexually abused by someone in my family. And I didn't tell anyone for a while. And then when I did, as happens so often, I was maybe not believed or maybe made to feel like it was my fault. I didn't know how to handle it. I used drugs for 5 years as kind of an escape. And then thankfully, through rehab and a lot of therapy, was able to process that. It obviously changed my life. And I think a lot of people will sometimes say, well, are you grateful for your trauma because it built you into the person that you are today? And it's not the trauma, it is the resilience that I credit. It's the fact that, first of all, I had tons of privilege and tons of support going through it, right? I had a family who was supporting me. I had resources and health insurance and a good therapist. But I think it was the process of accepting what happened and turning it into, I think, a piece of me. It's not the piece of me. It's not the biggest thing in my life, but it's always something that is there. And when I think back to that younger Melissa who was doing the best that she could, constantly reminding myself that I'm so proud of myself for getting us through that really difficult situation and having so much grace for myself for not knowing how to handle it and just doing my absolute best. Those are the things I think of the most when I think back on it now.
When did you realize you had a problem with heroin? Was there an aha moment? Did it develop slowly over time? And then how did you start to pull yourself out of that?
Yeah, I used drugs in the beginning as an escape. I had been looking for ways to take me out of this experience and my life, and drugs were the thing. I tried other things, they didn't work. Drugs was it. But then over time, I started to realize that the drugs were now the thing. I had to use them every single day to modulate my emotion and my energy. I knew I couldn't stop even if I wanted to. Other people in my life started noticing that they had become a problem. I was very functional for a very long time. And I had like a moment. I was sitting on my couch. I had just been paid. My boyfriend, live-in boyfriend at the time, said, "You need to get help because I can't enable this any longer. I can't support this." And I had a moment where my Vivu, my grandfather, who was long dead, he just came to me and he said to me, like, "You can do this." And I said, okay. And my boyfriend called a rehab clinic and they happened to have a bed that night. So I really feel like it was some kind of divine intervention that gave me, I think, the confidence in that moment to say yes. And my boyfriend at the time, who wouldn't let me change my mind, even though I tried really hard to on the way to the facility. So it was a slow slide, but I think I knew all along that I had a problem and I couldn't get my way out of it. And I wasn't really sure how I was going to.
Yeah, I can definitely identify with that. So I'm sober, and I knew I had a drinking problem for a long time, at least 5 years. And I kind of always said to myself, all right, we can quit when it gets bad enough.
Right.
But slowly over time, it just keeps getting worse. And you have all these moments where you go, well, I never said I'd do that, but I did that. And then it's the next thing. And sort of like you, where there's almost this divine moment. It's like one morning I just woke up and it just became very clear to me that if I kept at that, it was not going to end well. And it was almost like I saw this kind of door opening, but it was like on a hinge where it was going to slowly close. And it's like, if you don't walk through that right now, like this is your chance. And so I took it, and here we are, more than 10 years later.
I remember looking at my pay stub thinking, you're either going to blow all of this on heroin and probably kill yourself, or you're going to say yes to this thing. And so I think of those as glimmers. You woke up with this glimmer. And if you don't seize it right away, it disappears so fast. And I just feel like we are both very lucky to have recognized it and seized it when we did.
When you get out of rehab, what are the first things you did, though?
Well, the first time I went to rehab wasn't particularly successful, and I think that's really common. The only thing I did the first time I got out of rehab was I stopped using drugs. And I didn't really change anything else about my life. And I was really white-knuckling my way through it. And so after a year, I relapsed. There wasn't anything in particular that happened. I was just somewhere I shouldn't have been, and somebody offered, and before I knew it, there I was. The second time, I recognized that I was going to have to change every single thing about my life if I wanted to maintain my recovery. And I didn't think I would make it back a third time. And that was the moment where I thought to myself, well, what would a healthy person with healthy habits do? What would that person do? Because I didn't know that person. I had never set foot in a gym. I never cared about what I ate. I was still smoking cigarettes. And I thought, well, a healthy person would get up in the morning and go to the gym before work. And I started doing that. I started getting up at 5 a.m. and going to the gym and meeting people at the gym who didn't know my history. They didn't know that 2 weeks ago I was snorting heroin. They just knew that I was this new person that was new to the gym and I was showing up consistently. And being able to see myself through their eyes, I think, was an enormous blessing. I had a glimpse of this person that I could be, or that I already was, but I couldn't see myself as that person yet. And that was the cascade that sort of led me to all of the other healthy habits I adopted, that setting boundaries and dropping friends and really sticking up for myself and eating well and going to bed earlier and quitting smoking. And that was the catalyst, was just this one thought. What would a healthy person with healthy habits do today?
Yeah. Wasn't there a group that you met at the gym? I think it was a group of, and I've heard you say this, it was a group of women who ran together. Did you get linked up with them?
I did.
And how did that help you?
Yeah. I ended up meeting these women at the gym. I met one and we became friendly. And then she said, hey, I've got this other group of women that I run with. We're all different paces. we're all different ages. The age span, I think, was probably something like 30 years. But if you ever want to come run with us, I had never run a day in my life. I had never exercised a day in my life. And so I started running with them, and one person would always go slow to keep up with me. And we became fast friends. We did races together. We hung out together. We celebrated when someone got married or when someone had a baby. And I think that group of friends also really anchored. I didn't tell them about my addiction for many, many months until we had, gotten closer. But I don't think I ever properly said, thank you for bringing me into your group. And thank you for allowing me this self-image that I felt I didn't deserve at the time.
Yeah. I feel like that goes back to the first time you get out of heroin, nothing really changed. And then the second time, you start going to the gym, you meet all these new people, you make all these new connections, and that like total environmental change shifts everything. I mean, for me, the first thing I knew I needed to do was reach out for help and ask someone for help. And I met a good group of people. There was this one guy in particular. I came up to him and I just said, "Hey, I need help. Can you help me out?" And he was probably 55. Super smart guy, well-read, spoke Russian. And he just started working with me and things started moving. And I later learned 3 months into being great friends with this guy, he had stage 4 cancer.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, you are taking time out of this clock that is clearly ticking and it's ticking to help me. And I'm a moron, right? And it was like, once I heard that was almost like, there's no going back now. Like this guy and he ended up passing away, unfortunately, probably a year and a half later. But I just think back to that. And I'm just like, that is like what a human should be. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Wow. What a gift.
Absolutely.
What a gift.
So you get into health and fitness. When did you quit smoking?
Pretty quickly. I mean, you can't go to the gym and also be a smoker. I found out very, very quickly. And I was never really addicted to cigarettes. I was like a casual smoker, so I quit very quickly.
Yeah. So you kick cigarettes, you're in the running club. You start going down the rabbit hole of health and fitness. How did this eventually lead to the Whole30?
Oh boy, Whole30 was 2009. So it was quite a few years later. I credit my recovery to the year 2000.
Okay.
So through healthy eating and through running, I discovered CrossFit. I became very enamored with CrossFit. I started writing a little CrossFit training blog because at the time forums were the big thing. It was pre-social media days. And I developed quite a following through that forum. And so I started my own blog and we had gone to a seminar about paleo eating. That was all the rage in early 2000 CrossFit. And that seminar matched some of the information that my original co-founder was doing, some of the research he was doing into dietary factors that may be influencing his sister's rheumatoid arthritis. And he realized through this research that it's possible that legumes or gluten could be promoting these RA symptoms. So those two kind of merged. And after a really challenging Olympic lifting session one Saturday, he said to me, we should do this kind of squeaky clean 30-day dietary experiment. We just kind of eat this paleo way. And I think I was eating Thin Mints at the time, straight out of the sleeve. It was Girl Scout cookie season. And I was like, when do you want to start? And he said, how about we start right now? And again, I'm an addict. I have that like all or nothing, off or on, like, let's do it. And I put the Thin Mints away and I said, let's do it. And that was the start of what was to become the very first Whole30, just this 2-person self-experiment.
Yeah. And so you eat that way for a month. And what ends up happening? So
I had incredibly dramatic results from this Whole30 experiment. My energy, my sleep, my performance, my recovery in the gym, that was the main motivator for me, was I wanted to know if I could perform in the gym better. And all of that changed. But what it highlighted for me, and I know that you're going to understand this immediately, it highlighted for me the ways that I was using food like I used to use drugs. And if you had asked me what my relationship with food was, I would have said like, oh, it's great. I was the healthy girl at my office. I ate really well. But I had come to realize that my automatic reach when I was lonely or anxious or trying to avoid my feelings was to reach for food. And the Whole30 highlighted that, and it sort of taught me other ways to navigate stress and difficult emotions. And it helped me to sit with my feelings. It was the first time in my life that I had gotten off the scale and out of the mirror. I was, like most young women, pretty body conscious. So it was just this dramatic transformation that I felt like really stuck with me. And my co-founder had an equally dramatic transformation just in other areas of his life. And so I thought, I want to write about this on my blog. And so I wrote about it on my little CrossFit training blog in July 2009. And I said, does anyone want to do it? And a bunch of people said, yeah, we would try that. So I'll just say when two people have incredible results from a dietary experiment, you think, yeah, that's really interesting. When 100 people come back with equally stunning, pretty similar results, that was the moment where I thought, oh, I have something here. This is something.
Yeah. With kind of reframing your relationship with food, how did that unfold? Was it just that you would have an emotion and you would be like, I want peanut M&Ms, whatever. I'll use the one that I would use. Peanut M&Ms, but you can't eat them. And so then you're going, well, why do I want them in the first place? Or, yeah, unpack that for me.
It was, in the moment, it was just, I am uncomfortable. And then I would I'd just go into the pantry. It wasn't necessarily anything specific. And it wasn't even that I was eating nothing but peanut M&Ms and Doritos. It was the fact that with any discomfort, my immediate reaction was to distract myself. And food is the fastest, easiest, most societally acceptable distraction. And so not being able to reach for that thing and thinking to myself, well, like a carrot's not going to cut this. Why isn't a carrot going to cut this? Why wouldn't a carrot with guacamole cut this? Made me realize, okay, what am I experiencing? And I'm still in therapy at the time. I've been in therapy all along. And so, talking to my therapist about this discomfort and how do I sit with my feelings? And I would always try to analyze them in my head. I want to name it. I want to identify it. And instead, we were focusing on just sitting with it and allowing it to exist. And maybe where do you feel it in your body? All of these things were happening at the same time. And it was almost as if I couldn't really understand the concepts my therapist was providing until the thing that I had been leaning on so hard was gone. And then I didn't have a choice.
That forced you to experience it beyond just the intellectual.
Yeah.
It's like you got thrust in it and, oh, now I feel it. Not just this this big concept I'm trying to understand. It's like, oh, this is it.
Yes. I mean, I always wanted to intellectualize it. I always wanted to explain it. I lived very much in my head and I was very disconnected from my body for a number of reasons. The trauma and the drugs and all of the influences that tell women especially that we can't trust our own bodies. And so one of the things with the Whole30 is it actually helped me reconnect with my body. I was learning to trust my hunger signals and my fullness signals. And so all of this was happening out of this 30-day experiment where I thought, oh, maybe I'll just recover faster from the gym. It was so unexpected and so powerful. And that's why I wanted to share it.
Yeah. So a lot of people tried along with you. They have equally dramatic results. And then how did it unfold from there? As I understand it, a CrossFit gym, didn't they ask you to come down and be like, would you teach us how to do this? And then what happened then?
Yeah. So I was, again, super involved with CrossFit at the time. There's a CrossFit gym down in Virginia. The owner reached out and said, hey, can we have you come down? Could you come down and do a seminar on the Whole30? And we were like, okay, I guess we can. We drove down. We had people sit in these cold metal folding chairs for about 6 hours. And I don't think we charged anything. And we just went down and talked about the Whole30. And we were so lucky at the time because CrossFit was so incredibly well connected. And so that gym talked to the other gym, and then that gym sort of was talking about Whole30 with their other gym. And all of this is happening mostly through the CrossFit forum. And the requests really started pouring in. CrossFit gyms, we traveled to CrossFit gyms almost every single weekend for a whole maybe year, if not two, talking to people about the Whole30. And CrossFit was, I think, pretty on brand with the way I was talking about the Whole30, which was very like, it's going to be hard, but you can do hard things and you've done harder things than this. And so that mentality with the way that I was talking about the program at the time, I think was a really great fit. And then of course, people who are super into health and fitness got amazing results. So they wanted to tell their friends, and it grew largely via word of mouth.
Yeah. And then that leads to the book, which blows it up. And that eventually it just expanded way beyond the scope of CrossFit. And was it mostly by word of mouth, do you think?
It was via word of mouth. I remember I was pregnant, so it would have been late 2012. And we went to a CrossFit gym in Philadelphia to give this presentation, and there were 150 people in the room. And during a break, I looked around and I thought, there are people my parents' age in this gym. And, mostly at these seminars, they were young and they were fit and they were athletic. And I'm seeing a lot of people who maybe don't look like they do CrossFit, like they weren't in the CrossFit gear, and they were just people like my parents. And so I started walking around like, oh, how are you here? How did you hear about it? And it was, my son told me I had to come, or my daughter called me from Connecticut and said, you should come listen to this. I think you would really benefit from this information. And so that was where I realized we were starting to expand beyond CrossFit. And over the course of the next few years, we just continued to grow via the books and media coverage. But in the beginning, it was all word of mouth.
When did you decide to quit your job to go all in?
It was April 2010. So I had done my first Whole30, that 2-person Whole30 a year ago. And I was doing my 9-to-5 hustle. I had worked there for 10 years, worked my way up. I managed 20 plus people in 3 different offices. I was good at my job, but I was doing Whole30 stuff on the side. So nights and weekends, I'm writing blog posts. I'm traveling for seminars. I'm building materials. And at some point I said, something's got to give. I was doing both kind of poorly at this point, and my heart was really in Whole30. And so it was like, you're either going to jump and do this and see what happens, or it's just going to sort of limp along. And that didn't feel right to me. So I waited. I had a retention bonus, I remember, and I waited until I met that bonus. And then I gave my notice, and I used that bonus as kind of the seed money to get going with Whole30.
Awesome. All right, let's get into the specifics of Whole30 though. Big picture, what is Whole30? Because I want to say, I think people use the word diet. I don't know if you would use diet. So how do we talk about it?
It's funny. Historically, I would say, don't call us a diet. Don't call us a diet, because diet's such a dirty word. It's so associated with dieting for weight loss and diet culture. But Whole30 is at its roots an elimination and reintroduction diet, an elimination and reintroduction program, if you will. And elimination diets have been around since the 1920s. They're not new. They're often considered, even today, the gold standard for identifying food sensitivities.
So they're used for if someone has a food sensitivity. Walk us through how it works.
Yeah.
You were probably just about to do that until I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. Food can have an impact on people in ways that they may not associate with their diet. It may be impacting in a negative way things like energy and focus and sleep, cravings, obviously digestive issues, bloating, any kind of digestive distress. But it can also have an impact on things like, we talked about rheumatoid arthritis, joint pain and swelling, chronic pain like tendinitis, acne, allergies, asthma, anxiety. All of those things are impacted by the food we eat, sometimes in ways that we don't associate with our diet. So the Whole30 essentially rules out for 30 days or eliminates these foods that, according to the scientific literature and our experience now of 17 years, are commonly problematic for people. So these foods are not bad. These foods are not unhealthy, but to some degree of deviation, some people find that these foods are causing negative symptoms in their body. So we leave them out for 30 days and you see what happens. What happens to your energy, your sleep, your digestion, cravings, anxiety, all of these symptoms. And then at the end of 30 days, you add these food groups back in one at a time, very carefully and systematically, and you compare your experience. So if you take dairy out of your diet and all of a sudden your seasonal allergies feel better and you're breathing and you're not quite as stuffy, and then you add it in at the end and all of those symptoms come back, that just gives you valuable information about how certain forms of dairy work in your unique system. And then you can take that and use it to craft a personalized, sustainable diet that feels broad and joyful, but keeps you feeling as good as you want to feel.
Yeah. Do you have a sense of what % of people are sensitive to at least one food?
I don't. And there's not great research because, first of all, food sensitivity testing is not particularly accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And also people's experiences with food is so unique and diverse. Some people are allergic to or sensitive to properties in broccoli, which anyone would consider a health food by nature. I know that there are statistics on things like lactose intolerance, but lactose is only one part of the dairy puzzle. People can also be intolerant to the milk proteins like whey or casein. So I don't have statistics, but I do encourage people to go into the Whole30 with an open mind. Just because these food groups are problematic for some doesn't mean they'll be problematic for you. And if you discover a food group like gluten isn't giving you serious negative symptoms and you enjoy eating it, I want you to enjoy eating it and to include that in your diet going forward. I don't want you to eliminate foods for no good reason.
Yeah. So big picture, it's you have, I don't know if you call it a list of foods, but effectively, like, here are foods that people tend to be, have some sort of sensitivity to. These are the biggest offenders for a lot of people. So we're going to remove those. We're going to have you eat foods that most people do not have a problem with for 30 days, then see what happens. And if things improve, then you slowly add back into foods that tend to cause issues in people one at a time. That way you can go, oh, like you said, my allergies flare up when I drink milk. And then from there, you don't seem to be making a judgment of, we'll never drink milk again. You're saying, well, at least you know that. Do what you want with it.
Exactly. Yes. Life after the Whole30 is all about taking the information you've used and using it in a way that feels joyful, broad, and sustainable to you. So it's not, oh, dairy makes me bloated. It is this particular ice cream in this particular context with what's happening in my life, is it going to be worth it? I know I'm going to be bloated. I know I'm going to be gassy. Is it worth it right now? And it might not be worth it if you're having dessert at a large business dinner where you have to present afterwards, but it might be worth it if it's summertime and you're at the beach with your family and you want an ice cream cone. So it's not about me telling you what to do with that information. It's just about you having that knowledge and feeling the freedom and the confidence to apply that as you see fit in your own life.
So full disclosure, I have done the Whole30. And I'll give you an example. Beans. Those do not sit well with I get like bloated. My stomach hurts. I just don't feel good. But if I'm at Doña Maria's Tamales in Las Vegas, I'm like, yeah, you know what? It's worth it. I'm going to have some beans. I accept the hell that I'm going to go through afterwards in my stomach, and I move on. But if I'm at a place where I'm like, this isn't that great, I'll skip the beans.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And sometimes what you can do through the Whole30 and your self-experimentation is you can discover, okay, well, is there a way I can include this that doesn't mess me up so much? Could I take some Beano, which is a fantastic digestive enzyme specifically for legumes? Could I take that? Would that help? Or is there a gluten-free version of this that I find just as delicious, but I know isn't going to impact me in the same negative way that gluten does?
You have so many people who have gone through this, like millions of people. And you just have all this feedback. What foods tend to be the biggest offenders for people?
Gluten tends to be the most commonly problematic to some degree. And we're not talking about people with a gluten allergy, although the Whole30 has helped people identify that they have celiac, which is hugely life-changing. But gluten sensitivity can impact people in any number of ways. And so gluten and then dairy, I would say, those two categories tend to be the most problematic, but maybe it's not all forms of gluten. Maybe it's not all forms of dairy. For me, I can have sourdough bread, no problem. But if I combine gluten with sugar, that tends to have more of a negative impact. So there are so many different factors that we encourage you to play around with during reintroduction and then also in life after. But when we reintroduce food groups on the Whole30, they are reintroduced in general order of least likely to be problematic to most. And I actually left off alcohol because alcohol is at the very, very end, but I'm almost like it goes without saying that alcohol is the most problematic, but not everyone chooses to reintroduce that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Which tend to be the friendliest? Just any food on the list?
Legumes tend to be the least commonly problematic, or if they are problematic, it's to the least degree, in that most people do experience some gas or bloating, but perhaps that could be mitigated by the type of bean. So I can't do kidney beans at all, but black beans are okay. They could be mitigated perhaps by a digestive enzyme. Maybe it is slowly adding small quantities so that your body becomes more accustomed to that food and perhaps starts to produce more of the enzyme that helps you digest it. So legumes tend to come towards the beginning of the reintro schedule, but it is so highly variable. So people really, have the freedom to be able to introduce in whatever order they want. And of course, the results are going to vary tremendously.
So I weigh myself all the time. I go on Whole30. Don't weigh yourself was one of the main tips. Okay, I'm going to do it. And you write about non-scale victories, which I think most diets do not talk about that as much. It's very much, lose weight. Did the number on the scale go down? Great, you're successful. But you don't factor in weight, and you talk about non-scale victories. So what are those, and how do they manifest?
The no scale, no weighing yourself during the 30-day period came from my first experience with the Whole30, where I mentioned I got off the scale I didn't weigh myself for months after my Whole30. It didn't matter because of how good I felt. And so because the Whole30 is not a weight loss program, we do not restrict calories or macros or meals or meal timing. You eat whenever you're hungry. You eat to satiety. Because we're not designed as a weight loss program, we want to encourage people to embrace all of the other incredible benefits that you can have when you change the food you put on your plate. And when you are on a weight loss diet, because of diet culture, but also because of what the diet is literally designed to do, you tend to be blinded to all of that. You will feel worse if it means the number on the scale goes down. And we're sort of the antithesis. So non-scale victories are any of these benefits that can't be measured by the number on the scale. Improved energy, no more 2 p.m. head-on desk slump, reduced cravings. That's a huge benefit for most people, where they no longer feel like they're pulled to the pantry every night at 9 p.m. or have to have their pick-me-up at 2 p.m. Better sleep, I think, is a hugely underrated benefit of the Whole30 that will not show up on the scale, but that has a positive impact on everything in your life. And then you've got the improvement of symptoms that people have reported: less anxiety, fewer aches and pains, better mobility, fewer hot flashes. All of those things are huge benefits that really translate, but couldn't be measured by a number on the scale, even if you wanted to.
So U.S. News and World Reports ranked Whole30 as the worst weight loss diet.
I know.
What was your reaction to that? And I'll give you mine. Is that I laughed because I go, they don't even have you weigh yourself. So is this a weight loss diet? I don't know. What was your reaction to that?
U.S. News and World Report has been ranking best weight loss diets for many, many years. And for many years, Whole30 was at the very bottom of the list. And so they would email me in December and they would say, hey, this list is under embargo. Do you want to see it? And I finally just stopped, I started replying like, absolutely not. This list is trash. We're not even a weight loss diet. Ha ha ha. Right. And so a couple years ago, I said this, and the person in the seat who was doing their PR or media actually wrote me back and said, well, if you're not a weight loss diet, what are you? And say more. And can we get a little info? So I actually worked with them very, very closely. And I don't think we show up on their list anymore. If we do, it's sort of as a mention or an aside. But it always made me laugh because I was like, well, should I be proud that we're dead last because we're not a weight loss diet? Or should I be annoyed that they continue to classify us like this?
And which were you?
Both.
Yeah, good. Competing feelings. Good.
Both.
One thing that I love is that you bring in all these outside experts to develop the diet, and you bring in a lot of psychologists and habit change experts. So we were talking about this a little bit before we hit record, why is that so important to actually making this stick?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know if you recognized it, but I bet you might have. There's a lot of recovery language and sort of recovery coded wording, vibes, sentiment in the Whole30, in part because when I was writing it from a place of supporting my own recovery. But I think it's so important to also talk about people's emotional relationship with food and people's habits, because you can white-knuckle your way through any elimination diet. You can put your blinders on and just go on willpower alone and get through it and have nothing change at the end of it. So what I want people to do, and why I've built so much habit research and behavior change research into the program, is because when you have that first moment where you think I'm just anxious, I'm afraid, I'm lonely, and I'm reaching for this thing and it's not available, I want to have resources for you. I want to have guidance for you in that moment to say, okay, now what do I do? There's so many different resources we've created to talk about the Whole30 mindset, to talk about stress management, to talk about habit loops, to talk about how to break those loops or replace them with something else. There are entire videos I've created that are designed to say, what else could I do besides reach for this thing in a very detailed and practical way? Because unless you talk about that, it's going to be very difficult to make any of these observations or changes you've made in that 30 to 40 day period sustainable. And I want them to be sustainable. That's the whole point.
Yeah. And this is where I think research can often fail people. It's like just because a study says that this diet is best, but it was conducted in a lab where they lock people in a metabolic ward for 2 weeks and tell them, here's exactly what you need to eat. Like, that is not real life. You take that person out into the wild, and it's like, okay, well, the real world is full of all these different foods. And so we need to figure out, how do I figure this thing out in the context of my daily life?
Yes, I think that's one of the things that I most appreciated when I first read your work too, is that you are very good at taking this best case, most well-researched like scenario and meeting people where they are with it. Because if you can't do that, then what good is having the knowledge of all of this research? So yes, there are best practices. And also I recognize that there are so many barriers to entry for people to be healthy. I'm talking about social determinants, the determinants of health. I'm talking about, food deserts and income and poverty and access to healthy foods and food noise and all of these different factors that make it so difficult for people who want to make these changes, make them. So if I'm talking about best practices, you should only eat organic and grass-fed and buy from the farmer's market, I'm immediately leaving out 99% of the population. So what I want to do is make Whole30 and this research as accessible as possible while making it as successful as possible. And that's the line I'm always trying to walk.
It seems like you've learned so much from your community about that. So you did a updated version of the Whole30 book released in, was it 2023?
2024.
2024.
Yeah.
And in it, you talked about how your own sort of mindset has changed in the sense that when you started talking about the Whole30, you're in CrossFit gyms. As you mentioned before, it's like, yeah, these people, if you tell them jump, they say how high. And they're hard charging. And then as it expanded into this like broader population, you started bringing in people who were never going to do CrossFit and were all so different. And so how is your thinking about sort of what you mentioned with accessibility and making sure you're giving people options that are culturally sensitive? How has that evolved over time? And where have you changed your mind on certain topics?
Oh, I've changed my mind on so many things. And it would be weird if I hadn't, considering it's been 17 years. But the way I talked to people and the way I talked about the Whole30 in the earliest days reflected the way I talked to myself, which was very black or white, very punishing, very do your best or don't bother doing it at all. I didn't have a lot of empathy for myself, so I didn't have a lot of empathy for others. I didn't understand the concept of privilege and all of the ways that I walk through the world easier than other people just because of the way I was born. And so as that evolved, as I learned more about privilege and the concepts, and as I learned to talk to myself with more grace and show myself more grace and empathy, of course, that expanded and evolved the Whole30 program and language. And so that is reflected everywhere. It's reflected in the word choices. We used to say Whole30 compliant because compliance was the name of the game. You're doing it or you're not. It's very patriarchal. And we changed that to compatible. Now it's these two things coexist. They're compatible. It's just small details like that. The most, I think, famous line of the Whole30 back in the day was, this is not hard. Quitting heroin is hard. Fighting cancer is hard. Birthing a baby is hard. Drinking your coffee black isn't hard. And you can hear why that would appeal to a CrossFitter. But someone like my mom hears that and immediately thinks, well, this isn't for me because I do think it's going to be hard. And so all of that had to change. The science had changed and updated our understanding of the science. The food landscape had dramatically changed. So all of that is why I wanted to rewrite that book, start to finish, head to tail, because so much had evolved that I couldn't just update it. It was like a whole new program almost.
I'm going to quote you. It's from your book, the updated version. Science is going to science. Great line. Science is always evolving, leading us to new understandings of the way various foods and ingredients interact with our bodies. I believe it's a good thing when the people you trust to bring you science-backed information say, we got it wrong. And here's how we're going to fix it. Ideally with references. Great paragraph. What things did you change based on updated science that had evolved over more than a decade?
The biggest change, and the one that we got the most heat for, was our rule around and perspective on seed oils. That's a touchy subject right now.
You touched
People
the rail.
make it.
You touched the rail.
I know. People make it their whole personality, okay? That's not my business. But in the earlier days, based on the research I saw, but mostly based on the interpretation of that research from the people we had surrounding us, the advisor kind of committee we had at that point, we really believed that seed oils were inherently inflammatory. And omega-6 to omega-3 ratio was often cited and oxidation was often cited. But we truly believed that seed oils like canola and soybean oil promoted inflammation in the body inherently. And so our point on them was just, you shouldn't eat them. And then I really think that I had started to evolve and change my mind on this based on what I'd been hearing and reading. So starting in 2022, I hired 2 different, unrelated, independent researchers to dig into the science and provide me with references, summaries, big picture observations that I then took in and absorbed. I asked a different, unrelated medical doctor to review that and give me his take because he works with patients. And we released this change where no cooking oil is part of the Whole30 elimination phase now. You can cook with any oil. And it certainly happens to fall in line with our accessibility mission because that does make the Whole30 more accessible. These canola oil is certainly less expensive than avocado oil and easier to source. But it was based on the scientific literature. And we wrote a very, very clear, very long paper summarizing the observations, tons of references. We came with receipts. And there was a subset of people who were really appreciative that we outlined it and were appreciative that we were so willing to say, we got it wrong and here's what we're doing now. But I would say the majority of people who were not even always related to Whole30, they just wanted to dive into it, were really mad that, we decided to change our perspective on this. And everybody knows that they're so toxic and inflammatory. And so there was a big hullabaloo about it in 2024. And then again, I kind of brought it up again myself in 2025 because I like to poke the bear like that and just remind people of where we stand. But I firmly stand by that. But Michael, if 3 years from now, new literature or understanding comes out that says, oh, maybe you should limit for whatever reason, I would publish that too. I'm not attached to these ideas. They're not mine. I just want to reflect the best recommendations I can for my community.
This leads me to a good segue. I heard you say on a podcast that you're a rule follower.
Oh.
But, so that surprised me. Because like you said, I like to poke the bear.
Yeah.
And on social media, you're not afraid to voice your opinions. And not just about nutrition and wellness topics, but about political topics as well. And so how do you square that by saying you were a rule follower, but I guess me saying, I don't think this person is a rule follower.
Oh, I think to me, it's one and the same. I am a rule follower. I'm an eldest daughter. I was the pleasure to have in class. I always wanted the straight A's. I'm a Gretchen Rubin obliger, upholder, if you're familiar with that framework. I'm an Enneagram 8. Like everything in my being says I am very direct and very straightforward and very challenging. I am a rule follower, but for me, to follow the rules means I have to live in my integrity, period. And so when I stand up on social media, either as me or as the brand, talking about our values and our commitments, that is following the rules. It's following my rules. It's standing up for and voicing what I need to say to stay aligned with my integrity. So for me, it's the same thing.
That makes a lot of sense. How do you, and this is me trying to figure this out in my own life, and it's something I haven't quite figured out. My general approach with politics is that I don't talk about them. And I obviously have my opinions, loosely held. But I sometimes think if I talk about politics, but I'm in the wellness realm, I'm worried that someone will disregard what is decent and scientifically backed wellness advice because I criticize a certain side or whatever it might be. How do you think about it?
I'm going to choose my words carefully.
Yeah. And that is a question, because like I said,
yeah,
I honestly don't know, because sometimes I go, I feel like I should say something about this. And then I go, should I? I don't know.
Yeah. First of all,
and I admire you for the fact that you do speak your mind.
I appreciate that. We, you and I, because we are of the most privileged of the privileged, could stay out of politics if we wanted to, because we are the people that politics, at least in this moment, are affecting the least. And so for that reason alone, I feel like it's my obligation and my, I suppose, duty to say something, to speak out, because I can do so with far less repercussion than some other members of my community who are already so heavily discriminated against and marginalized. So that's a piece of it for me. When someone asks me for help about the Whole30, I don't ask who they voted for. I don't ask what their values are. I just help them, and that will never change. But if you choose to discard the incredibly valuable, helpful, life-changing information that we are sharing or offering because you don't like my politics, oh well, I'm sad for you. I think that's a real bummer, and I think it's very close-minded of you. And I hope that you find something that does work for you, but I really don't care. I don't care if we lose followers. I don't care if we sell less books. I don't care if people no longer want to support us because we're standing up for what we think is right. I feel like those aren't my people anyway. And frankly, having those people in my community makes it less safe for those who are here. So would it be a shame if people choose to disregard the incredibly valuable information that you share? And would it perhaps hurt their own health and fitness efforts to do so? Yes. And also, that's out of your control and that's not your business. So I think I have to do what feels right for me. And yes, the stakes are high that you are going to lose people, that it's going to hurt your business, that it might hurt your brand. But for me, the stakes of saying nothing are so much higher.
It goes back to that word integrity, you said.
It is. It is integrity. It's also, sometimes I'll say to a white woman who comes into my feed asking me to stick to food and not to talk about politics, Whole30 has always represented you. You have always seen yourself in the brand. I have always supported you, and other people have. I need other people in my community to see themselves in the brand. I want to support them exactly as much and to the same degree of helpfulness that I supported you. And if you don't want that for them, then I think that's pretty shitty of you, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I would invite you to sit with that, but maybe not on my feed. Maybe go find something else to sit with. But my community is very varied. It's very diverse. It's varied. And I need people to see that I'll ride as hard for them as I do for Kathy from Oklahoma.
If I start posting about politics on social media and get an influx of comments, I'm gonna text you and say, why did you do this to me? Or I'll just hand the feed over to you.
You should. I'm very, very good at figuring out where and how to clap back and how to still be real nice about it. Listen, here's the thing, Michael, you will never make everybody happy. Some people are going to be really mad that you're not speaking up. People are going to be mad when you do speak up. When you do speak up, people are going to wonder why you didn't speak up about X, Y, and Z. And when you speak up about those things, you didn't do it in the way they wanted you to. This is always going to be the case. In which case, you just need to do what you want to do.
Totally. If you're a rule follower, maybe I'm too much of a people pleaser.
Oh, I can definitely help you with that.
Okay. We'll do that offline so the world doesn't get into my psyche.
Yes.
But you talked about community, and so much of the Whole30 happens in this digital world. And so how have you managed to build such a strong, tight-knit community with people talking to each other, feeling like they're part of something bigger than themselves online? Yeah.
I'm super grateful that we have these spaces, that we have forum and that we have social media, because Whole30 has really grown and our community has stayed incredibly well connected. I think part of that is that I stay really closely connected to the community. If you message me on Instagram, you are only getting me. I don't have a team on my personal feed. It is always just me. And I like to stay really close Because first of all, I've never had a good idea in my life when it comes to Whole30. Every single good idea I've ever had has come from the community. So when I listen, I hear pain points, I hear challenges, I hear struggles, I hear between the lines and think about, could I create a resource for that? So they're incredible idea generators. But I also like staying connected because people want their brands to be human, right? We want our brands to show us their personality and to make us feel like we're connecting with a friend, not some corporation. And I think Whole30, my entire team on the Whole30 side does that really, really well. We stay really closely invested and we are very reactive to the community. So when they ask for something and then we deliver it a month later or sometimes a year later because it's a book, they get really excited. Like, wow, that was my DM and it made it into your book. It's a really cool experience. And I think that makes people want to stay connected.
And to that point, you have gotten offers from rather large corporations to do all sorts of Whole30 related things, and you've turned down a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And was that all, yeah. Does that all go back to the community? Like, what is your larger goal with Whole30?
I always want to show up in a way for the brand that feels in alignment with our values and our message. And the rubric that I use, which is not very professional, but served me very well, is, does this feel gross? That's the question I ask myself before a new partnership or an opportunity, or even sometimes with current partners, they want me to share in XYZ way, or they want me to share on this date. And sometimes I ask myself, does this feel gross? Does it feel wrong? Does it feel wrong to talk about this in this moment? Or does it feel wrong to talk about this in this way? And if it does, I just don't do it. And there's only been one time way back in the day where it felt kind of gross and we did it anyway. And I just felt so icky about it that I swore I would never do it again. I don't ever want the community to show up thinking, well, this doesn't feel like Whole30. This doesn't sound like her.
A lot of your recent work focuses on boundaries. Did that come out of the Whole30 community?
Yeah, very much so. When you think about it, you've done the Whole30. It's kind of like a boundary boot camp in that you say no to a lot of offers of food and drink during the elimination phase. It's and in your sobriety, you do that as well. It's the break room pizza or the birthday cake or the glass of wine at happy hour. And I quickly realized that people struggle to say no, even to something as simple as food or drink. So I started helping people say no to those things. And then they realized I was very good at saying no. And then they were like, well, how do I say no to my mother-in-law who's always coming by without calling, or the friend who's always emotionally dumping on me? And I started answering those questions. And in 2020, of course, with the pandemic, those questions really picked up. And that was where the idea for the book of boundaries came from.
Tell me about why you love the outdoors.
During a difficult point in my life, during my divorce and business split, I remember going hiking in the mountains in Utah. And there was a moment where the vista was just so staggering and my mind quieted. And I thought to myself, this is where I worship. This is where I talk to God. This is where I listen. And so from that moment on, really the mountains became church. And I talk to God all the time. We chat all the time. He and I are very close. But the mountains is where I feel like I receive best because it's just so quiet. It reminds me of how powerful I am, but also how tiny I am at the same time. It just feels like a very sacred experience to me.
I'm the exact same way.
Yeah.
Leah, my wife, likes to give me shit because I will see a tree and just start crying.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's so beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah, extended time outdoors for me is how I connect with something bigger than myself. And I think to your point, it reminds you that one, I'm very small, and two, that I'm part of something much bigger and much more ancient that's been happening many billions of years before I was ever here. And it's just this like centering reminder that's like presence, peace, but also you're only here for a brief moment, at least for me. And so let's make the most of it. And I tend to make the most of it when I'm outdoors.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but the chatter in my head just goes. And there's some point in my hike where it quiets. And I don't find that experience anywhere else.
Yeah. And what's interesting is after I got sober, I started meditating and I was pretty good in the sense that I would meditate at least 20 minutes a day. And then I went up to Alaska for a month. And that was just like any possible thing I was looking for in meditation, it happened there for a month straight. And it was like, oh, this is what I was after with that thing. And I realized if people like meditation and it works for them, great. But I realized my 20 minutes, for me at least, might be better spent outdoors, not to mention I'm getting some movement in, I'm getting sunlight, all these other lessons. I think nature is the greatest teacher for me.
Agreed. Yeah, hands down. And we're both lucky to live in a place where we have so much gorgeous opportunity to be outside.
Okay, we're down to the final 2 questions. You're a big reader. I'm envious of the amount of reading you do. What is the best book that you read last year?
Oh, I just did a write-up of 2025. I'm gonna say in the last rolling 12-month period, because I just listened to a nonfiction book that I am so enthralled with. It's called Sociopath by Patrick Gagney.
I gotta read this.
I know. Oh, listen. She narrates it herself, which is often a real iffy thing with audiobooks, but she's brilliant. And the book was just fascinating. I love nonfiction that reads like fiction, which is how I categorize your books. It's just so all enveloping and enthralling and storytelling, but it was so fascinating to hear her own self-discovery and exploration of what it means to be a sociopath, people's perception of it, psychology's perception of it, what it means for her and her life and her relationships. It was fascinating.
So is she a
hands
sociopath?
Down, yes. Yeah,
Oh,
she is.
wow.
And so it was, and she knew as early as childhood that she was different, but wasn't sure how, and quickly learned how to sort of mask but couldn't quite get it right. I won't go into it too much, but I'm telling you, the story is absolutely amazing. And I think there's a lot we can learn from it, in that there are some characteristics of being a sociopath that I think we would all be better off adopting, like caring less what other people thought of us. And then, of course, there are a lot of negative aspects, which I couldn't cultivate if I wanted to, because I'm not a sociopath, but it was fascinating. So I'd say that was one of my favorites.
Okay, amazing. Final question. Let's say you're on death row because you've decided to adopt some of those sociopathic tendencies.
Okay.
What would your final meal be?
Oh, sushi.
Sushi.
All kinds of
Whole30 approved? Or would you just be like, Whole30's out the window?
No. I haven't done Whole30 in years. I probably won't ever do it again. Sushi is one of my hands down favorite foods. We just go all in. Lots of wasabi, lots of ginger.
You have to.
You have to. Lots of rice. Yes. At some point, remind me to tell you how I think I would thrive in a prison environment because of the routine and how much time you would have to exercise and read. I don't mean to make light of it, but my husband jokes that prison might be an okay environment for me because of how little I would have to talk to people and how much time I'd have to read.
You might have a business idea. It's a prison, but for people who don't want to commit a crime. It's just we'll lock you up for a year. Have fun.
Oh, that would be the dream. Are you kidding? I would be so fit and so well-read.
Yeah. You could get a tattoo artist who's doing it not with a needle and a string and it's all shitty. Get a good tattoo artist in there. It's like a spa prison hybrid.
Oh my gosh. We would have great food too.
All right.
And lots of outdoor time.
Well, we have a long follow-up conversation. We'll start figuring out the business plan for our spa prison. But in the meantime, Melissa, thank you so much for coming on the show. I loved talking to you, as I always do.
Same here, Michael. Same here.
That is it for today. And thanks again to Melissa for coming on the show to talk to us about Whole30 and the story of her amazing life. New episodes, as a reminder, are going to be dropping twice a week in your feed, so please subscribe. And if you have any questions for the Ask Michael Anything section, please drop them in the comments or send us an email. Even better, if you want to rack up some bonus points, send us a voice memo or a video, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. As always, have fun, don't die.